Not here to make you happy, not here to make you sad. Your feelings are irrelevant when debates are to be had. The Belfast Bapcast, loud and clear, covering the topics of the sphere, Working overtime to bring you many stories, waking up today the same labor and Tories. A stage, it isn't our part to play, is bringing you knowledge in this way. No filter, no fuss, just tell unfiltered fact, much like the words on those Christian tracks.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Belfast Bapcast. On tonight's Belfast Bapcast, we're joined by John Wedger, a former Scotland Yard detective who has spent over 2 decades in the Met tracking organised crime, vice and child exploitation. But his career took a dramatic turn when he blew the whistle on institutional child abuse cover-ups inside the police itself. Since then, John has become a relentless campaigner, exposing how deep the rut runs, not just amongst predators, but amongst those in power who protect them. He's paid the price for speaking out, career destroyed, reputation attacked, and his personal life thrown into turmoil. This isn't just a story about police corruption, it's a story about conscience, truth, and the lengths the establishment will go to silence those who refuse to stay quiet. John's here tonight to share his journey, the truths he's uncovered, and why he believes the public need to face the uncomfortable reality of how systematic child abuse really operates. So thank you very much, John.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. I'd rather there was the option over Zoom, and this is what I prefer. This
100%
head to head.
It's a lot better in person.
Yeah.
So just to begin with, so before we get into the darker material, take us back to, well, joining the police, what drew you into it, and what the job meant to you in those early years?
Yeah, it was never a career path I wanted, because we're going back to the 80s when football hooliganism was rife in the UK, and our Saturdays, you know, they were dominated by sports programs, and at the end of every sort of grandstand program on the telly, it was always ended with a pitch invasion, and you'd see running battles with the police and football fans, and I just thought, wow, unbelievable, what a job to have, and the police were getting hurt, and I'm not a man of violence, I'm not a man of confrontation, I'm the opposite, you know. I used to spend my time just walking my dog, you know, so I never really wanted to sort of be in that uniform policing side of things. But the detective side had a massive allure.
Yeah,
I was fascinated by detective programs. I watched a film called Serpico once when I was a kid, and it was a film about a guy called Frank Serpico, and he was a New York detective in the 70s, I think late 60s, 70s, and he spoke out about corruption, and his own colleagues shot him in the head. And he survived it, and Al Pacino played him in this brilliant film, and I was fascinated. I used to like watching the Sweeney, things like that. Columbo, yeah. That was my nickname for a long time. A solicitor once said to me, "You remind me of that American detective with a shit car," and he said he's scruffy and he always acts thick. He said, "You're just like him," and I said, "I've got a shit car as well. I always had a shit car." Someone once told me, look, it's a wise man that plays a fool. And it was a brilliant bit of tradecraft that I employed later on. And it was massively to my benefit, you know.
How long before you get into the detective side?
It came very quickly. I mean, I initially joined the police because I was a telephone engineer. I worked for British Telecom.
Should have made that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was a cracking job, you know.
Yeah.
It was. I was an external engineer. I used to climb the poles, and
well, he got away from the poles very quickly because he doesn't like heights.
Oh, right, well, no, good for him then, is it? So, but I mean, it was a great job. They looked after me. I sort of grew up in my sort of teens without a dad. My dad died when I was quite young, sort of a bit lost really, and over a few failed attempts at other jobs, Telecom took me on as an apprentice when I was 17 and really looked after me. And I had a passion of swimming. I love swimming. And I wanted to be a trawlerman, actually, to work on the trawler boat. So I was fascinated by it. But I lived in London, so that was a waste of time. And then I thought I'd become a diver, work on the rigs and all that stuff. So I went away and I trained in my spare time. I was taking time off work and I was going on these courses. And the government offered to sponsor me to do a course at Fort William, over on the west coast of Scotland, just north of Glasgow. And they had the dive centre there. So I went over and I did a test and everything else, spent a weekend, a couple of days with them. And then I said, they signed all the paper. And I thought, right, I'll put in for redundancy and then I'll pay for, get on the course and I'll get on the diving. But there wasn't much work in the UK, and a lot of it was going out to Filipinos and things like that. So I was advised not to do it. And my sister was a fingerprint expert for the police. And she turned around and said, why don't you join the Met Police? They actually lost their dive team because they've all been nicked for corruption.
Right, okay.
Because the dive team was selling all the equipment to a dive school out in Thailand, and they were ordering equipment and then they were flogging it and making money, and they got caught out and they all got in loads of trouble. And so they disbanded them and they started a new recruitment drive to get divers in. So I joined to become a diver.
Okay.
And so I passed everything for the police. I passed everything for the fire brigade as well. But I didn't want to do the police because I thought if I become a fireman, I can do this like 4 days on, 4 days off. And that means I can go swimming, because I was obsessed with swimming, right? Absolutely obsessed with it. And I thought, if I join the police, I won't be able to go swimming. And it was only based on that. So I got offered both jobs. And I put in for redundancy with my work. This was sort of in February. And the police, the fire brigade said, we want you to start your basic training with us beginning of March. And then the telecom said, your last day of employment with us will be at the end of March. And then police said, your training date starts with us beginning of April. So if I join the fire brigade, I won't get any of my money. Right. So I thought, well, if I join the police, I'll get my redundancy money. If it all goes wrong, I'll do the diving course, and I might even be able to train as a diver with the police, because they said there was a possibility I could.
Yeah.
So I joined the police. I didn't want to. I did my basic training with them. I hated it. It was very strict. It was very military run back then. A lot of the instructors had come out of the army. We had to march and in parade, and it went on for a long time. It was like 5 months of just nonsense.
How was it adjusting to that sort of systematic, having to take the order down?
I couldn't take orders.
Like that would kill me.
It killed me, and I couldn't. What got me was my first day on parade, and you line up, and for the first month you have to wear a suit, and then you get your uniform. And there was loads of us at this training college. I don't know how many it was. Maybe there was 500-600 of us, and we'd line up in these 3 ranks outside the statue of Robert Peel. And the officers would come down, and these guardsmen would take us for parade, and we'd have to stand to attention. And I just looked down at everyone, all the same, perfectly, not even a bit of dandruff on their uniform. And I thought, my God, this is how the Nazis started. And they marched off all perfectly together, and I couldn't do it. I was always out, and that made them shout at me more. And then I had to do remedial lessons on marching, which was humiliating.
It's the non-questioning of the orders that scares me. Like, there's many nice people in the police, obviously, but how far they've came since Robert Peel is beyond belief.
Yeah, it's a slow indoctrination. You don't realise it's happening to you. And then, of course, you pass out, it's an achievement. So your loyalty start going away from your civilian life into your police life. And then when you go out to the actual work, you work a shift pattern, which is so awful and it's so demanding, you end up with no civilian friends. And then because of the nature of the work, it's just horrendous. It's gutty, really. You want to tell people about it, but your mates don't understand.
Yeah.
But your police mates do. And then the way you do it is through drinking. So it's a hard drinking culture. So my basic training, I hated it. I wanted out. I tried to get arrested. What I was doing, because I didn't want to give up on the job, I thought, if I get caught doing something wrong, they'll kick me out. So I'd walk into a shop. I'd walk into, like, say, Marks and Spencer's or one of them shops, and I'd just take a sandwich out and eat it in front of the staff.
They probably just thought you had escaped from somewhere.
Yeah, and walk out, and no one stopped me. And I was thinking, I've just nicked a sandwich, and I wanted to get caught.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, that won't work. So I thought drink driving will. So I just would drink drive. And one day I had a little motorbike, and I'm in London, and it's early hours of the morning, and there's set traffic lights. There's a police car directly opposite me, and I went straight through a red light. And of course, they've chased me, and I weren't going to go too far because I thought if I go too far, they'll beat me up. So I pulled in, and the guy rushes out, the passenger, and he's, right, take your hat off. You just jumped a red light, and he smelt the alcohol on me. And there was a bit of fear in me because I thought I screwed it up, really. I screwed it up. You know, I could have had a career out of this, but then a part of me thought, I don't want to do it. I don't like it. I don't like the people.
Obviously, these were unconscious thoughts at the time.
Yeah.
You're not actively thinking it.
Yeah, but the thing is, God's got a plan.
Yeah.
When God has a plan, God has a plan. And he said, right, I'm going to get the breath test machine. And he said, how many you had? I said, I don't know, a lot. So he goes off to the car, and he comes back, and he says, is your name John? I went, yeah. He went, the guy driving the car's my sergeant. And there's this guy waving at me. He went, he knows you. I went, I don't know anyone in this area. And he went, you trained him to dive. And I looked at him and thought, yeah, I taught him to dive because I was that good at diving. I started teaching it.
Okay.
And I taught him to dive. So he went, he's told me to tell you, go up your bike. So I couldn't even get kicked out for doing that. So I just thought, right, I'll give it a go. But I went on the street and I loved it. And the violence, it was really weird because I'm not a violent person. But in order to, if I just take it back a little bit, they had a swimming pool in the basic training place, right? In the training centre. And recruits were not allowed to use it, right? Only on a Friday evening you could use it. The rest of the time you couldn't use it. And it was a good swimming pool with boards, everything, right? So in my lunch break, I'd never had a lunch break in my life. Because in my lunch breaks, I used to go swimming. And with British Telecom, I could go swimming for an hour, 2 hours, because they weren't bothered. So when I went to the police, I thought, I can't have lunch, because they used to give you an hour and 45 minutes lunch, because you'd have to do some book work and that.
Yeah.
So I used to sneak off and go in the swimming pool and swim. And one of the instructors caught me, and he went, you're a recruit, you shouldn't be in here. But I was a good swimmer. He said, I watched you swim. He said, you're good. He said, I'll tell you, we'll do a deal. Come in tomorrow. I'm breaststroker. And he said, if you do a mile in 25 minutes, which is a competitive rate,
Yeah.
it's hard going, right? Thinking, I don't think I've ever done a mile in 25. He said, I'll let you stay. I went, okay. Anyway, I went in there and I did it. I did a mile in 25 minutes. So I was knackered. He pulled me out the pot. He was a big ex-army guy. And he went, shook my hand. He went, well done. You've just made the wrestling team. I'm thinking, how's that work? He said, right, I'll let you swim 3 days a week, 3 lunchtimes a week, but 2 of them, you go to dojo and you train as a wrestler. For the rest, we've got no one in the wrestling team. No one wants to do it, but you're going to do it.
The wrestling.
Yeah, the grappling, you know, Olympic wrestling. So I started doing it, but my fitness was so good. I was actually quite good at it. And it instilled a massive amount of confidence in me. And I become good wrestler.
Yeah.
Right? And so I went on the street, and then when it kicked off, I just resorted to that, and I was just taking people down.
And you're not injuring, you're extinguishing a situation.
You're straight on them, you know?
Yeah.
And I sort of made a good reputation for it, and I weren't backing down to it either. And all of a sudden, I got addicted to it. And the people I worked with liked me. And so my early career, it was really good fun,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm writing a book about it at the moment, and there was a darker side to it. I end up meeting a girl, and she had 2 kids. She lived on a house estate, and we used to call it the council house gene. And all the girls from the council estates were always good looking. And they always had kids by loads of blokes. It was just I don't know, social issues and all that. Anyway, I ended up getting her pregnant. But her dad was inside for murder. He was he just finished attempted murder. He shot a policeman in the leg and nearly killed him. And anyway, he wasn't a nice man. And of course, my work found out about it, and it caused a lot of problems, you know.
As you imagine it would.
Her dad got out of prison, and he went to go and shoot me because he wasn't happy with her. He wasn't right in the head. So I got moved from where I was working in Southeast London. I got moved to the West End. And I ended up going to a police station in the West End, which had the most corrupt CID department of any police station ever. Right. So we're talking about the early 90s, when corruption was at its height. And it was so bad that the government were forced to do something about it. So they employed a commissioner for the Metropolitan Police, and his sole job was stamp out corruption. So he had this brilliant idea of anyone that was in the flying squad, the national crime squad, these big crime units where there was some shocking levels of corruption going on there. There was coppers that were involved in armed robberies, contract killings. You know, they were a law unto themselves. And they were dangerous guys. They were tough guys, you know, and a lot. When I joined the police,
And to a degree, acted with impunity as well.
Of course.
At a stage, yeah.
Well, the more elite you get, the more you get that. And a lot of them come out of the military. So, you know, and they were tough guys. They knew what they were doing. They were tight, and they were corrupt. So this commissioner decided, chuck everyone in the same police station so we can monitor it. But at the same time, they decided to send me there, right? And they also sent all the gay and lesbian officers there. So it was this melting pot of anyone that they deemed a little bit dysfunctional or a bit odd, chuck them into this police station. It's called Belgravia, and it was under total surveillance. We didn't realise it at the time. So I got sent there in the height of this purge on anti-corruption. And I can remember on the first day there, a guy said to me, what are you doing at this, Nick? I said, I've transferred here. And he went, no one transfers here. You get sent here. No one transfers here. He said, you come here if you're bent or you're bent. What are you? Well, I must be bent then. So but I had 2 years in, and for someone of such low service to move, it really was unheard of. But I had a lot of confidence, and I knew what I was doing. They thought there was an admin error, so they put me down as 22 years service, and they put me in the CID. So I got chucked into the CID, and it was just another world.
Baptism by fire,
And well, and Freemasonry had a stronghold in it as well.
still does.
Yeah. Then it was even more, and it was obvious. You know, there'd be certain days of a month there'd be no one there. You know, Wednesday afternoon it'd be empty. And I said to my mate, "What? Where's everyone gone?" I thought, "Is there a drink up?" And he went, "No, they're at lodge meeting." And I didn't even know what that meant. Well, what do you mean a lodge meeting? He went, "Masons." I went, "Hey, what's that?" And
So largely, yeah, there's a lot of naivety. By the sounds of it. And your eyes continued to open as the years go on. So you're in
Belgravia. I was there, and I was having it. And what happened is the girl I was with, I managed to get a place to stay, and she had my first kid. But what I didn't realise was that she had a drug problem. I was so naive to that as well. You know, I just had a nice life, really.
Yeah.
Working class lad from a working class background. My dad was a black taxi driver. You know, and you know, so there's nothing special about my upbringing, but it was just nice. I'd never been exposed to any real sort of nastiness or anything like that, and I certainly didn't know what child abuse was. And one day there was a guy in the custody, and he was what we call a drummer. He would burgle houses,
okay.
You know, screwing houses. and he was the same age as me, but he was on heroin. And I went down to see him, and I took him out for a cigarette. And I was always kind to the prisoners. I'd always give them a cup of tea and a cigarette, and I'd chat with them. And I made a career out of it, really, getting information. That's what I ended up doing. And I got used by big intelligence agencies in the end, because I ended up developing a good skill of rapport with people just by being a nice guy.
It's amazing how far it'll get you, isn't it?
It'll get you everywhere. It's the biggest opener of every door. You know, no one ever changed by being horrible to them, you know?
No.
And they're in trouble, and they don't need stand on anymore. They need help, but they've got to play the game, you know?
And a lot of the people in these situations have went through the care system and have experienced nothing but like negativity from every authority figure they've came across. So,
Mark, they all did.
Yeah,
they all did. And this guy, he said to me, look, I said, why are you on heroin? I didn't understand the concept of heroin. Why take something so negative, so awful, and crack cocaine? And he went, well, if you'd had my life, you'd do it. I went, well, what do you mean? He went, I was in a kid's home and I was raped. And I couldn't understand how a man could have sex with a boy.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I was thinking, how does that even work? Is it even possible?
Yeah.
And it was all going through my head in the most graphic detail. And he said, I take the heroin to block out the pain. He said, the emotional pain. And he said, when I take heroin, and I'm not in any way promoting heroin by saying this, but he said it's like being wrapped in the warmest duvet and floating off into heaven.
I used to take it. I used to be addicted to it. And that's
Wow.
Exactly what it felt like. Yeah. Until it becomes that you're just doing it to feel okay. If you know what I mean.
Normalised.
Yeah. So like at the start it's amazing and you do get that feeling, but then it just
they call it the line of normality. You go up like that and it gets lower and lower and lower. And in the end you go below the line of normality and you just want to be there instead of up there.
You're doing it then just to be not to feel sick. You know, it's a very, very strange.
Well, it's an analgesic. It's a painkiller and it does kill the pain. But that guy had no understanding of the impact he'd have on me, because child protection work in the police, that it was so undersold. And we were told when we were doing our basic training, it's for girls, it's a woman's job, you know, and that was it. And they used to say, right, we're going to do a lesson on child protection. You would have a week dedicated to racial awareness and discrimination, because that was getting a bit hot because riots were happening.
Yeah.
So they were a bit hot on the old race diversity thing. But child abuse, you've got 5 minutes on it. And the actual booklet, the train ones, dangerous dogs, it was about that big. There was 3 days on dangerous dogs. And child abuse, it was a tiny little pamphlet. And you were told you won't really come across it. And if you do, there'll be a woman there, she'll deal with it. And that's how it was treated. And I didn't really give it much thought. And all of a sudden, then I realised that my missus, that's what she was doing. And then she got pregnant with my second child. And she was doing drugs while I was pregnant, you know, and it did have an effect, you know. But then she ran off and never seen again. So I'm now a young lad. I've got an infant child, a baby, an infant child, and 2 kids that aren't mine. So social services told me, look, we're going to put them in the care system. But this guy told me, don't ever put kids in care because they'll get raped.
Yeah.
So I thought, I can't have that. But then I'm thinking, how can I live? I've got no money. And I just put my faith in God, really. I wasn't a deeply spiritually connected man. I was going to say religious, but it's a bit bigger than that then. But I strongly had a belief, and I knew there's a God, and I knew there's a Jesus. But I just had such a lovely family. I had a twin sister who stepped in and helped, and my mum said, look, we'll get through this, you know. So the social worker said to me, do you want to apply for them kids? I went, yeah, I do. I wouldn't even give a dog away, but I couldn't adopt. I didn't qualify because back then I was single. Yeah. Back then there was criteria. Now, you know, that anyone can adopt now. And I didn't even qualify for fostering. She said, look, it's called a kinship, right? So you look after them, you will get the parental responsibility signed over to you, but you won't qualify for any funding. Right, you know, that's it. She said there's a kinship allowance, which worked out something like 90 quid a month for 2 kids. Right, I mean, I might as well not have bothered, but she said that's as best we can do. We might be able to get you a few pennies for clothing and things like that. And I went, okay. So I went to the and of course I'm working at the same time, and I didn't really tell many people what was going on in my home life. I was sort of embarrassed in many ways as well, you know. Because the police's attitude was quite snobby, and they'd always single parents, dickheads, and all that. And these girls are all slags, and it was a bit raw like that. So I sort of kept it on the quiet for quite a few years. And I went to court, and their mum was compelled to come to court. And when she was asked what she wanted, she said, I want his 2. She can keep the other 2 CUNTs. And that's how she called her own kids. And the judge just looked at me and shook his head. And he's just signed them all over to me. And strangely enough, years later, I met the same judge when I became a detective. And he went on to become a Crown Court judge that specialised in child abuse. And he come and saw me after a trial once. He said, do you remember me? And I went, yeah, I do. He said, how is everything? I said, good, you know. And he was the one that gave me my children. And brilliant, lovely guys. So some good ones in the system.
There is, yeah.
So I'm young. I've got all these kids. I'm doing very, very well in my career. And, you know, I had my ups and downs. It was difficult, but I was very unorthodox in my approach.
How did you divide the time between children and work? That must have been...
I survived on about a minute's sleep a night for years. Yeah. I suffer from insomnia now, and that actually ended up leading to a sleeping tablet addiction.
Okay,
right, to get over it. So that's gone now, but I mean, it nearly caused me a lot of trouble. That did.
What was the tablet?
I was taking Zopiclone, okay. And also like cocodamol and that, because later on in life I ended up dealing with so many people with mental health problems. They were giving me their meds. I said, yeah, take that, John. You look knackered. I went, and I literally wouldn't sleep for weeks on end. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I took one. It was a cancer patient.
And the best night's sleep ever. Yeah.
I'm telling anyone that, and in the end, you can buy them on the black market online.
It's a slippery slope. Yeah,
awful. Yeah. You know, what happened was I ended up overdosing on them, and I was out for 3 days. And luckily, I nearly lost my job, everything, but I nearly died, to be honest, you know. But it was that comfort. And all of a sudden I realised what people must have gone through when they take these things, because of everything I've been through with the kids. And so I end up embarking on this journey as a single parent, and I loved every minute parenting. And the 2 boys that are mine, I've got a rule, we're all the same. What one gets, all get, you know. Yeah. I go on holiday with my boys. My oldest one, who's biologically not mine, I work for him. They've all gone on to do really well. I've got grandchildren. We love each other so much. It's just beautiful. But it's had a knock-on effect. You know, my youngest boy grew up without a mum. Never even saw his mum till he was 4. You know, grew up without a mum. He don't understand what a mum is. And bless him, it affected all of them. So anyway, what happened then was, this is where it starts getting dark, as if I had enough on my plate. The job came out for the River Police. Now, within the River Police is the diving unit. And the River Police is the best job in the world. You will never find a better job than working as a cop on the River Police. And they worked the same shift pattern as the fire brigade. They did 4 on, 4 off, with an extra day every 3 weeks. So you've got, you know, 4 on, 4 off. Then one of that, you get 5.5 days off. It was like brilliant for being at home with the kids and everything. It was perfect. Yeah. But it was such a good job that everyone wanted it. So for every position, there was 2,000 applicants. And there was no way I'd get it. I wasn't ex-Navy. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. So I put in for it anyway. And what had happened is it was under review, the unit. And in order to, had a shocking reputation for just doing no work at all. So in order to survive, they wanted to become proactive. So they actually changed their criteria, and they wanted people with a proactive approach. So I put in for it, and I went for my interview, and they liked my attitude so much, they gave me the job. They said, look, you've got it. I couldn't believe it. I was thinking, there's no way. Anyway, I went away, started on this unit, and that they were so, if the other place was old school, this was real old school. You know, this was the first policing unit in the world. They were occupying the same building when policing started, 1798. They were still in the same building.
Okay.
The attitude was the same. And if you went against their culture, you was in trouble. So the night duty, you basically did an hour or two's work up until what they called the suicide shift finished, where people would get drunk and then commit suicide. So once that was finished, they'd go back and just drink whiskey. They were doing a bottle of whiskey a night, the team, and go to sleep. And I was teamed up with a guy. He was in the SBS before he joined the police, and he said, "Oh, just do some work. Do you want to do some work?" I went, "Yeah." So we just started nicking people, right? And we got really busy. But our team were great, and they sort of said, "Well, we'll carry on, but don't expect us to get involved in it."
Yeah, they want their whiskey.
They want their whiskey and they want their night's kit. No one ever left the night duty type, right? So what happened then was that because it was on the River Thames, and the River Thames is tidal, the police station was a port, and it was the only bit of policing, I think, anywhere in the UK where the senior officers were also warranted as customs officers. So they had this open warrant to go and search anything having applied to the magistrate. So customs officers have that. They don't need warrants. The government, the Crown, has given them a warrant. You can search any property.
Pro bono, just
yeah. And the senior officers there had the same power. It's really odd. But Special Branch had an office there. And an intelligence unit from Special Branch there. And there was a sergeant on there, and he was brilliant. You know, he was just really good. And he got posted to this sleepy little hollow in the East End of London on the River Thames. And one day I'm walking by, and I'm sort of bored with my work, but my home life's brilliant. And he bangs on the window as I walk by, and he said, "Come in here, you. I need to talk to you." He said, "What are you doing on this unit?" I said, "Well, I want to be here and all that." He went, "Oh, come on, John." He said, "Seriously, you shouldn't be here." And I thought I was going to get moved. I started panicking. I went, "Look, I've got kids and everything." He went, No, you don't understand. I've got a job for you. I want you to come and work for me, right? I sort it all out, but I need you. I've seen how you work. I like you. You still get home for your kids. Don't worry about that. In fact, you'll have more time working with me. But this is a very sensitive covert operation. And he said, but you'll be taken out and you're actually going to be seconded. It ended up working for the National Crime Squad back then.
Okay.
Right? And it was tracking down paedophiles that were living on canals. He said, "Look, they're coming out of prison. We've got people in the prison system, in the paedophile non-swings, and what they're doing is they're telling everyone when you get released, because now the sex offenders register's happened, they're shitting themselves that they're going to get attacked and burn out their homes. So tell them get a canal boat, live on a canal boat, and they're getting on the canals, and we need to stop this." He said, "It's come from high up. We need to look at it." So we know of 2 of them. Go and check them out. I do. He said, "I don't know." He said, "We'll review it." Right. I was like, "Okay." So I came back after a month, and it was quicker than that. I found 90, right? Living on boats, barges, all sorts of things. You know, there was these alternative communities where they just get, basically they're like old sheds that they just put on pallets and floated on the water, and they were living in that, and there were some dangerous paedophiles on there. And at the same time, the BBC had a program called Rosie and Jim.
Yes,
where the little kiddies were on the little dolls rag dolls that lived on a canal boat, and it was appealing to kids. And these paedophiles knew that, so they started putting little Rosie and Jim dolls in the windows, and they set up businesses to give respite to special needs kids by doing canal trips. And we found out they were running these charter boat things. They were everywhere. And so I took my findings back, to the police. I was what was classed as a field intelligence officer, and they were stunned. They were like, "This is mental. We didn't expect this." And I said, "But it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger." So it went up to the National Crime Squad, and they went, "Look, you got to keep going, right? Just keep going. Don't stop." So it got taken out of London. It became a national thing. So it was on this national project now to find, and I was getting inundated, and I couldn't keep up with it. But info was coming in from everywhere, all over the world, really, kids on boats. But then information started coming in about there was a boat up in the Thames by one of the royal palaces, Hampton Court Palace, and it was owned by someone connected with the government in the education department, who was in charge of the writing the legislation for children in care, how to bring up a child in care. And the guy's a paedophile, but he was holding parties in which politicians were going to him on his boat, and there were boys from care homes being brought in there and being raped. And this information come to me. So I went and saw a colleague of mine at the paedophile unit at Scotland Yard, and he went, John, he said, be very careful now. He said, you're entering a different world. And he said, whenever you get rid of policing, like you've seen with the drug stuff and all that, he said, they love you and your career blooms. But when you get really good to do with paedophilia, it's finished, right? You get shut down. He said, we've had it twice, and he named a very senior position in Margaret Thatcher's government. So we had this guy twice for little boys, each time shut down, told to shut our mouths, all that. He said, John, you got to be careful. He said, because what you're doing, I'm hearing it being mentioned now. He said, you're actually on borrowed time.
It's elements of power that you can't really touch.
I never understood that, you know. I never understood paedophilia, and I just thought that the police would be so happy with it. And on one level they were, but on another level they weren't. And it was only a matter of days. I was just brought in before a senior officer, and the whole thing was shut down. I said, no, you've been moved. And I went,
so whenever you were investigating and it led towards elements of power, obviously this is shocking for you. Like, what people currently in power are?
Yeah. That was going. We had names of it, and then what I was doing was I was a proactive intelligence officer, right? So, and I'd go to meetings and relay the information. Would share information, but all the other departments were involved in this, and because it was a national thing. There was information coming in from travel agencies, from the church, from all sorts, and names were being mentioned. And for the first time, I started hearing celebrities being named, and we'd share this information openly.
Yeah.
And, you know, the comedian, there was one well-known comedian. There was, there's a singer of household name, this guy, and he does a runner to another country in Europe. And it gets brought up in a meeting. He said, look, so-and-so's moved to live in this country in Central Europe. I've got to be careful what country I say, because it will narrow it down so much. The liable thing will kick in. And he said, look, we had the images on his computer with kids. And of course, Gary Glitter had turned up, you know, and, you know, so all of that, really, that sort of sparked it off. But, and I see this guy, and everyone thinks he's brilliant. I can't say too much because, you know, it will end up being silenced. But you've got to understand that their reward is fame. That's their reward. You know, it's not ability. It's because of what they're involved with.
But at the cost of what?
Well, a child's soul.
You know what I mean?
A child's soul. And that's what we know about. Right. And then I started hearing this thing. I would go and tell my mum. I went, Mum, look, listen, this name come up. She went, no, that's rubbish. So I'm telling you now, this politician, I didn't know some of these politicians. So have you heard of this one? Yeah. So I'm just telling you, I've he's been caught with images, or he's involved in rent boys and juvenile prostitutes and that. And it was a shocker. And then because of the unit I was on, it was so serious, we had to be careful, and we were told as well, this is tight-lipped stuff,
Yeah.
And you realise that these are people in positions of power, privilege, in the public eye, and so that's when I first really started seeing how far it goes. And of course, we're looking at criminality. So the criminality that I dealt with was based on poverty and ignorance and poor upbringing, which is what most police deal with.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Pub fights and burglaries and that. It's just a socioeconomic, decline, and posh areas don't get it, but poor areas do.
Yeah.
And but this was different. This involved these people that everyone thinks brilliant. I mean, there was one, it was a female actress, and oh my word, I mean, as if the entertainment hasn't blown enough smoke up her ass. And a guy said to me, "You know what she's been done for, don't you?" I went, "No." She goes, "Oh, loads and loads of convictions for prostitution." And he said, she had to have surgery because she specialised in anal, and she's had to have surgery. And I said, "What sort of level?" He said, "Street prostitution." She got picked up, and he said, "I'll show you her record." And she's on the telly all the time. And she was, and I went, "Really?" And then there were other, anyway, there was quite a few. And I was being shown the evidence,
Yeah.
I was being shown it. And they were known about it because these people were being monitored by these the intelligence service is clever, and I didn't realise how clever it was. The post office has their own branch of it that report back to the National Crime Squad. The health industry has it. The travel industry is a major contributor, right? And they monitor so many people. And a lot of these people going out to Thailand. That was the main route, Thailand. And I see it a lot with these expats. It does make me laugh. They go on about this country's screwed and Asian grooming gangs, and they're all paedophile, and they're going out to Thailand, which is the hub of Asia, child sex trade. I'm thinking, what are you on about? So I always question these people that go and retire in Thailand, these single men that go and retire in Thailand.
Well, I don't think there's much to question. I think when it was
a bit of a done deal, wasn't it?
Yeah. So obviously you've seen that there's a two-tier system almost going on, but like how did they decide that? Well, like said, Gary Glitter gets caught, or like
because they're stupid. What happened with him? He took his computer in to PC World, and I was told the stuff that he had was very young, because the officer that was dealing with registering him and monitoring him was a close friend of mine. So I got to quite a bit about that case, and then I got to know one of the therapists at the Verne, HM prison, the Verne, where they send a lot of them. So you get to, and I started being sent on courses to learn about them, and I started working the criminal profilers, and I'm really privileged to be doing that. And I learned so much from that because I started understanding the psychology behind paedophilia, and how dangerous, how subtle it is, how dangerous it is. And it's all to do with the intention. What people think, oh, they're just harmless. But when you get into what's in there, it's so sinister.
Yeah.
It's so dark. But when you saw someone, you think, oh no, he's just a smiley happy. But there'll be leakage in their action, things they said, which will be powerful indicators, which might be very, very subtle, or maybe even seen as innocent, but they're not.
Yeah,
they're not. So they shut that unit down, and I was so upset. But then I was told, look, you'll get the job you want. And this again was Freemasonry, crops up with that. Because a job had come out with Scotland Yard's very elite vice unit. Again, one of the best jobs you could get. So I spent my early half of my career having the best jobs you could get in the police. The most exciting, for me anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I never had a gun or anything, but I ended up on armed units and things like that. But I was never into that. But I never in a flying squad because I didn't want to, because it was to do with banking, and I didn't care for the banks.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was doing with debt collecting for the banks. That never excited me. But street crime, but I started to value investigating crimes against children and seeing actually it's got more value than economic crime has.
It's a life.
It's a life. And I realised, having dealt with the victims, what it was doing to their souls. So I thought, I want to take this to a more professional level. I want to start interviewing these kids, but you have to be psychometrically assessed and properly trained for that. And the unit I was on wasn't kitted out for that. So the vice unit come up, and I went to see this one good sergeant, and he said, you need to know how things work in this game. And what he was telling me was how Freemasonry works in the police. I said, what job are you going for? I said, this job here. And it comes out in a magazine, and there's all these jobs, and you've got to hit certain criteria, desired criteria. I didn't really hit any of them because I was very young in service, and I hadn't had a big CID background. It would be rudimentary. I hadn't been on national level squads apart from this secondment.
Yeah.
So it was, I sort of had done the work, but as I was a secondment, I wasn't officially on there. So it was a bit here and a bit there. And he went, don't worry about that. You want that job? I went, yeah. He said, well, I've been told you'll get any job you want, for your rank. And I went, yeah, that's the one. So he said, well, look, funny enough, he said, and it's got the name of the officer of that unit as point of contact.
Yeah.
He went in my lodge. I was like, all right. He went, watch this. So he gets a phone, rings the internal number, puts it on the speakerphone, and this inspector answers. This detective inspector from the vice unit answers. So he said, exchanging names. Hello, brother. How are you, brother? And all that. He went, listen, this job you got, I've got a lad here. He wants it. He said, can you vouch for him? He went, 100% I'll vouch for him. Okay, then. He said, got pen and paper. Went, yeah, 20 questions at the board for your interview. He said, he's to write it down now. So gave me 20 questions with 20 answers. Stick to that, he'll get it. And of course, I scored highest, for this job because and that's how it works. And I was thinking, wow, you don't stand a chance if you're not in that clique, really. Anyway, so I was grateful, eternally grateful, and I went on to the vice unit, and it was brilliant. It was real street work, and it was nights, which helped me a lot of it because I had the day with my kids,
Yeah.
So my job was to work with street prostitutes and just persecute them and harass them, really. And then when you start talking to them, they all had something in common. They were all crackheads. They're all smackheads. A lot of them had terrible diseases because of their work. But they were all abused in the care system, every one of them. And they all said a story. And I started thinking, I shouldn't be prosecuting you. You're just surviving.
Victims. Yeah.
But we had to work with the brothels as well. And I didn't like the prostitutes in the brothels because I found them greedy people. Because some of them were married and they were telling their husbands that they were hairdressers and things like that. They were getting good money cash. They were putting their kids through private schools and all that. Yeah, they were going out and working in the sex trade and their husband didn't even know. And it disgusted me. Whereas the girls on the street were surviving.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. So I ended up having quite a strong affinity with the street girls. And they said, John, instead of like attacking us, why don't you help us? So I got one of them. I managed to get her away from her pimp, get her into a sort of a woman's refuge. Anyway, she had issues with addiction and all that, which caused a few problems. But she started working with me, right, as my informant. She said, look, when you turn up, you lot go home. We're meant to stay till 6, but we used to go home at 1. About a day.
Yeah.
So you'd go out and you'd blitz the streets, nick as many prostitutes as you can, get them charged and bail them to a court, and they just got fined. And now they're going to pay it. They got to go out and back on the game to pay the fine. So it was just an absolute nonsense, right? And she said, instead of you going home, hang about, and sent me to a certain road. She said, when you go down there, wait in that road, in the bushes at the end, after 2 o'clock, this little girl appears. Right, gave me a name. She's only 13, and she's on the game. I was like, right, okay, brilliant. Anyway, sure enough, she turns up, this little girl, and she was tiny. She was a little girl anyway, but she was on heroin, crack cocaine. She had AIDS, she had TB, she had all these things going on, scabs and everything. And because she weren't eating properly and the drugs, there was nothing of her. And she looked like a little primary school kid. And she even dressed like that. And maybe that's the appeal. And I got hold of her and I chucked her in the car. Said, right. She said, am I nicked? I went, no. And I'll get you. And I tried to get her into a secure placement for her own safety. So that was my plan, to take her back and get her into secure placement. So before I run the social services, I needed authority from my boss. So I rang up my boss and went, no. What if you know, you should have gone home anyway. Throw her out. She's got scabies and she'll infect the car. We'll have to get the car cleaned out. So that was her attitude. I didn't throw her out, but that was her attitude towards it. So I started focusing more and more on the young kids, and it caused a real issue. So the little girl kept calling the police saying, I'm being pimped out, and police do nothing about it. And every time I get put the kids home, I run off because I want the crack, come back to London, and I go back on the game. And there's this woman, the police know her, she's a prostitute, but she's running loads of girls. So my boss says, well, since you like the little girl so much, go and see this one and tell her to shut her mouth. Right? She keeps making these allegations, she's on the game. She was outside of London in the secure unit, and I went up there and my briefing was shut her up. Went to see her, and again, she was tiny. She was this little aggressive, horrible, nasty little, she weren't nasty, bless her soul. And you know, she was a major part of my journey, really, to Christianity and to doing what I'm doing. But you know, I only denigrate her to put in context, you know.
Yeah.
Because she was anti-police, her mum was a drug addict, and the system had failed her. And this kid was being preyed on. And I went to see her, and she said, "I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth." So she was so specific of what was happening. She said, "John, it ain't just me. There's other girls." So I said, if I take you out of here and we go on the street, will you show me? So I'll show you everything. And they were like Jamaican yardies. So we hear this Muslim grooming gang, Muslim grooming. They do exist. Of course they exist. And of course they're being protected. But they've always been protected, these pimps of these kids. There's been Jamaicans were doing a lot of that. We don't hear a lot of this Jamaican grooming gangs.
Never heard of it.
They were doing loads of it in London. They were probably the main group, you know, these yardie boys.
Yeah.
And everyone thought they were cool and trendy. They were paedophiles because they, as well as serving the drugs up to these little girls, they were shagging them and pimping them out as well, you know. And we had East Europeans doing it. We had a woman doing it, a white woman doing it. Anyway, so this girl, she said, the police know all about this. And I found records, intelligence records, which shown they'd known for a good 15 years this was going on. So she checked out. And she put her life at risk because we were dealing with dangerous people. So I started really nutting into this. There was a contract put out on my life to have me stabbed or shot by one of these Jamaican boys to shut me up. That never happened. I didn't get shot or stabbed. So, but the contract went out. This girl tells me of her friend. So I went to see her friend. Her friend was like, she was mixed race. So it wasn't, these kids, we had girls that came from Iranian families. We had Arabs, North African girls. We had white English girls. We had gypsy traveller girls. We across everything, black girls, black boys, across the board. We never see that represented with this Muslim grooming narrative, you know.
Yeah.
And it was going crazy. We were going on the street. The girl I worked with, we were virtually living on the street. I spent so much time on the street in rough places, picking these kids up every night. It was honestly, it was like taking apples from an orchard.
I've heard it described before, like a meat rack.
It was unbelievable. Yeah. You just couldn't. You go in one, you find two, and we were getting inundated. But they started saying the same thing. Look, the girl who was running it, and it was a prostitute called Foxy was running it all. She was in with police officers. there was the police station where if she was caught soliciting the woman, where she got took to, the police officer that was in the custody there was involved in it. It was all covered up. He was named, and it was covered up. He was allowed to get away with it. There was a judge at the magistrate's court involved in it. And then the client list of the girls, it was, oh man, it was across the board. So in the morning, to get things going, you know, everyone needs a bit of crack. So the girls would be taken to crack house and just passed around. Crack dealers, Jamaican boys, local boys, all shagging these little, and they're little kids. You couldn't mistake them for anything other than what they were. Yeah. They knew they were little kids. They were all doing it, and the Jamaicans were paying for that with rocks. So Fiona Walsh, who was the foxy girl, the prostitute, was taking them in. She was getting 10 rocks for each girl that was passed around. And these crack houses are wretched places, you know, horrible. You know, and the diseases that's going about as well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They're no place for a little kid, you know. And then as the evening drew on, they were taken to hotels, budget hotels, where all the builders that were coming down from the north of England. I mean, now you get a lot of the builders come from Eastern Europe. Back then, they were coming from the north. For the same as East Europeans do now, they were coming from the north for the big money in London, you know. So the plumbers, plasterers, and they were all shagging these girls. So they're the ones that will be going to all these rallies, going, you know, foreign boys out. You know, all the builders unite. It was that lot. They were not denigrating saying all builders are like that, but these were the clients for these young girls, and that was a fact. And all their little white vans all lined up along the road, and the kids were saying, yeah, that one there is, and they're all northern guys back then. So again, it's not an we're speaking the truth here. We're passed around now, so the hotel, what they would do was allow a room to be rented for half an hour. So the girl would be put in the room, pay the night watchman, pay him a bit of cash, so a spare room, and they're also giving him a couple of rocks. So he was smoking a couple of rocks. Girls are going and getting raped. Couldn't even say getting raped in these places. And then when that trade finished, you know, after midnight, they were then being taken to upmarket Arab restaurants. So there was a Muslim element to it, but these were upmarket Lebanese, Kuwaiti restaurants, Omani restaurants, and the kids they will get $2,000. They'll pay for one kid to be brought in there and just gang rape all the men. And these are little kids, and it was massive, right? And it spiraled out of central London. It started going out to provincial areas. And one part of South London called Croydon, a social worker heard through the network what I was doing. So she contacts me. She said, you know, can we talk? I went, yeah. She said, look, your unit is meant to be looking at this problem. We've been for the last years, maybe a decade, I'm not too sure, but it was like many years, we've been weekly going to your units and we need help. Our kids are being picked up from care homes at different places, taken to taxi firms, and that was run by a well-known gangster in South London, a gangster, you know. So again, all these gangsters and all that, they were involved in all this as well, you know. They were all caught up in it. So I can't see these gangstery, filmy things because I knew what they were doing, like the Cray twins, all that. They can go to hell, a lot of them, you know. No way. There's no honour in it of that. So, and she said, look, I'm really worried that sooner or later a kid's going to get killed. So I thought, well, enough's enough. The stakes are too high. And my bosses weren't giving us the help we needed. So I said to my colleague, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a report on everything we know, an intelligence report, and I'm going to hit them with it. They're going to have to do something because kids are going to die. And she went, no, don't do it, John. Don't do it. We'll get in trouble. I went, no, we won't. No, we've got to tell them, right? So we were deliberately downplaying it because if we did that, we kept going. You know, we had an inkling that maybe they might take it the wrong way, but it was a bit of a gamble. But in my heart, I thought they're going to have to help because kids could die here. Sounds a bit dramatic, but it was the
It's
truth.
yeah.
So I put this report on, and then almost straight away I get summons up before senior officers at Scotland Yard, and I go up, and a very, very senior officer, he said to me, "John, what the effing hell have you done?" I went, "What do you mean?" He said, "You can't put stuff like this down." He said, "If the public finds out about this, we're F's, right? Past, present, and future." I went, "But it's going on, boss." He went, "Yeah, we all know that. You don't know what you're dealing with here." He said, "Listen, if this ever gets out, it comes from you. You will lose your home, your job, and your children. I guarantee you that." He said, "You'll be thrown to the walls, right? You need to shut your mouth and shut it now." And every bit of reasoning, compassion, and everything was at total conflict in me now, because I could not believe what this guy was telling me. It just didn't compute, you know?
He's obviously trying to protect you there as well.
Of course, he knew what he was protecting. He said, "You've no idea how high up this goes." He said, "I promise you now, if you go outside of this room," he said, you're screwed." And he said, "If you make a complaint to anyone," he said, "it'll end up back in my lap." And he said, "This complaint form will be filed over there." And he points to the bin. "That's where it'll go. No one of rank is going to betray each other on this one. It's you that will get it." And he made quite clear, everyone high up will stick together. And he went, "Well, you're off it now. You're removed." And I couldn't believe he did it to me. And I was scared. I was broken-hearted, scared. My colleague, she couldn't cope with it. She went crazy at me, because that was it. There was the operation over. So we had dozens and dozens of kids that were ready to become witnesses for probably the biggest case that the police ever had. Like, we saw it with this in Manchester, but there was about 3 girls. We were talking. That was the beginning. 2 of us on it. They scaled it down to 2 children, and bizarrely enough, them 2 children both died in mysterious circumstances.
Just after it was wound up.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
disgusting.
one almost straight away after, one a little bit later. Yeah. And I was removed, and I was put on what's called a child protection team. It's quite rough. It's probably the most diverse London borough. It was probably the most diverse borough in the UK, to be honest. We had everything going on, and everyone was abusing their kids. And one of the most famous cases was out of a little kid called Baby P.
Yes.
And I end up dealing with that case. That's a byproduct. I won't muddy the waters with that one, but that was a particularly nasty case. And the police were massively responsible, but never held accountable for that. Never held accountable. Poor kid, he didn't have to die. And if they escaped properly, he wouldn't have been dead. What we're looking at, there is corruption, but in amongst that is laziness and incompetence. So the devil does things for more than one reason. So I end up working on this unit, and I'm told, I'm warned, I'm ordered that I must look into child prostitution as long as I have a career with the police. And I take that as taking a gentleman's handshake, but I'm shaking hands with a snake, so there's no validity in that. So within an hour of this new appointment, I asked my new detective sergeant, "Is there any prostitution on this borough?" So, funny you should say that. There's a maternity leave, always on maternity leave. She was looking into it because there is a position that we have to look at it. So, but there isn't any. She looked into it for two years. They go to meetings and they discuss, are there any kids involved in the sex game? And for the last 2 years, nothing, not one. Yeah, this one had the most children's homes. And kids' homes, they're sort of unregulated, because you've got the big kids' homes that are regulated, and they're regulated by Ofsted, because they still have to have an education and all that. But then they have this lean care where you've got this gap of the 16 years onwards, and they don't have to be regulated. So that, and they still get paid because it's from 16 to 18, still costs a child now. So there's loads of them, and they're a business.
Yeah.
And they're totally unregulated. And this is where it goes on in these places, right? And they're everywhere. And they're getting £2,000 per week charge. Because usually it's about 1,000 to 2,000. But if a kid's got issues, they get more money. So it's better to have with issues because you get more money. And they were doing sod all to protect the kids. So
they're medicated to high hell as well in these situations. The kids, like the antipsychotic medication and the list of stuff is insane.
There's a lot, but these kids were just predating them.
Yeah.
Because they're and the perverts and the pedos, that's where they were going to get their kids. And then they were encouraging the kids to get other kids involved in it. So once kids involved, they then get paid by the perverts to get their friends involved. So it's a machine that feeds itself.
Yeah.
Kids' homes are interested because these children go missing. So they'll go on a Thursday at the height of the sex trade, weekend trade, usually come back Monday, Tuesday. And the home's happy. They still get the money and they only have to look after them for half the week. Right. And social services are happy because these kids are now in what they think is a relationship, but it's with a pimp. And they're getting money. They're getting them on heroin and crack. So they're actually keeping their mouth shut. So they don't come to notice because they've got regular income. So they're not really involved in street crime. So they actually get removed from that street crime scene.
Yeah.
So they're lost. But in actual fact, they're in this island which is eating them alive, whole, and destroying their souls at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it as missing persons. So where do these kids actually go? They go missing. And what do they do? Well, of course, they're involved in prostitution. But the police is so compartmentalized. The unit that deals with missing persons is separate from the unit that deals with child protection, which is separate to the unit that deals with child prostitution. And all they do is say, well, actually, it's that person's problem, not ours. So they can.
Nothing ever happens.
Yeah, they pass it round and they can get away with that one. So what I did was I got a list within an hour of being there, a list of the kids' homes, and I ring up the first kids' home and I said, how many kids you got? And I said, you're not in any trouble. I explained who I am. I said, just doing a fact finding. And I went, about 5, which was the average, 5 to 6 kids. How many of them go missing regularly a weekend? About 3, maybe 4. What are they? Are girls, boys, mix? Do you actually know what happens to them? Yeah. Picked up by cars, pick them up. I said, well, what happens when they get picked up? Write down the registration of the cars. Do you know these people are? Yeah, pimps. Well, no, I don't know. Some Jamaican boys, some Albanian boys, some, again, not Pakistan. They were involved, of course.
Yeah.
But the narrative that the state's given us isn't the same narrative that's really reality. And London is the most diverse city, so you're going to get it more than anywhere. And I said, well, what do you do it in for? Well, we write it down in the book. I said, have you got the book? Well, the books were there. It was written down. Which place? They're not bothered. They're not interested. We tell social services they're not interested either. I went, right. So I found within 10 minutes, 10 kids. One kid's home and 6 kids. 5 of them went missing from Thursday onwards to about Tuesday. Well, of course, that kid's home only has 1 kid left, and they're making all that money, making 10 grand a flipping week.
For 3 days.
Yeah, for 3, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So everyone's a winner, So I thought, I can't have this. So within the end of 3 days, I found 52 kids.
So the people you were coming across in the homes that were aware of this, surely there was quite a lot that wanted to do something about it.
Yeah, but what could they do? They were just admin staff only. They were like, they're not allowed to physically restrain the kids. A couple of the guys had a heart and they said, look, we have been up there and we sent the cars gone F off, but they'll just go around the corner, Yeah, and of course, mobile phones come in, they give the kids a mobile. And they said, but when they come back, they're in such a state because they'll have abscesses in their vaginas and they'll be coming down from drugs. They've been on drugs for days, been on benders, and they're screaming and shouting. And the home just wants them out again.
It's vicious circle. Yeah.
So I thought, right, I'm bringing everyone together on this one. I held a meeting So I said to my boss, can I have a meeting? He went, yeah. So I held a meeting, and I had the missing persons unit. I invited the vice unit, but I'd just come from there, so they never turned up. But I invited the child protection unit. They never turned up either. So we only had the missing persons. And then all these charities that claim to do exploitation. There's one major one, big major kids charity. There's two two main kids charities. Well, it was one of them two, right? I can't again say, but it was on a report submitted.
The founder was a prolific paedophile themselves. Is that the one we're talking about? Yeah.
So I had head of their child exploitation there and a senior social worker there, and both of them kicked off. What the effing hell are you doing? I went, what? And the social worker went, we've now got to put in emergency care plans for 52 children because of you. I went, well, didn't you know what they were doing? You went, yeah, but it never come to notice, so we didn't have to do it. But now what you've done is we've got to do it. And have you any idea how much effort, time, and money it's going to cost us? I went, but these kids are involved in this, in this dangerous game. And then the worst one was this kids' charity. She said, you're treading on toes. You need to back down now. She said, you're going to be reported to this senior officer. And of course, I'm already on the back foot here because I took an undertaking never speak about it again.
Yeah.
And I got warned, you lose your home, your job, your children. And I started to panic. I'm thinking, they're going to take my kids off me. I don't know how. I don't know what they're going to do, but I've gone against this threat. Anyway, but I needn't bother because within a couple of days I got moved. And my boss that was on there allowed me to do it. They moved in as well. So we get moved. So I come in and I said, no, you're being shifted off. So I got sent over to West London. And it started to affect my mental health, terribly. And I become a bit of a drinker. And I couldn't get out of my head. And then I heard the news that one of the girls had died in the original case,
Okay.
And it really broke me. Her name was Zoe. She's dead. So, and I do a lot of it in memory of this poor girl. I think her soul deserves this one. And because she's brave, she saw this out, and she was found dead on the streets. So put her in a care home, and then it all started again.
What age was she? Sorry.
She was, when I met her, 13. When she died, she was a couple of years gone over from that because it took a while for it to go through. But her body was found dead in the street, like a dog, like a fox, And the other girl, she was so young. She was 9 when she first started doing it, and then they moved her to a kids' home in Hereford, near the Welsh border. And within a week, she was in a relationship with a 40-year-old man. And social services made her do a written undertaking that she would not have sex with him. Right. But she couldn't read and write. She was a traveller. She was illiterate. So, and they made her have this undertaking, this signed thing that she would not get involved.
So that worked. Yeah.
Well, straight away it worked. It was perfect.
Yeah.
You just can't. How can you reason with that level of mentality? And that is they can actually go home at night thinking that girl is now okay. This is what you call cognitive dissonance. That is very, very well. And of course, not long after, she's found dead as well. And it broke me. And it really broke me. I went, and I was told in a really brutal way, especially when Zoe died. I got called up from the professional standards. By the way, Zoe Thompson's dead. And that was it. Yeah, found dead this morning, and I just couldn't cope with it. And it made me start thinking, God's put me on this earth to help kids. I'm helping them in my personal life. I've saved 2 that were going in a kids' home. The world needs to know about this. So I was formulating a plan. I was actually applying to leave out of the police, and I got myself a job driving trains. And there was a big kids charity, kids company in England, run by a lady called Camilla Batman-Gellich, big, larger than life woman. She looks black, but she's actually white. She's Iranian, and she ran this charity. And she approached me and she said, "You got to speak out for these kids because they're coming to me, these kids, and they're telling me I'm looking after 50,000 of them, and they're all saying the same. The world needs to know about this job." I said, "Well, I'll have no income if I do. I'll get in trouble." So I applied to become a train driver, but she said, if that fails, I'll give you a job. And I went, well, she said, yeah, I'll give you what your wage is. You come and work for me and we'll expose it, because she had the money coming in from the charity. So I thought, right, I'll do it. Anyway, at the end of that week, they shut a charity down. And the Home Affairs Select Committee banned her from her working with kids. Big case in the UK. She's now been exonerated. She's dead now. She died last year. But it ruined her. But she sacrificed her whole life helping children. She's a saint, this woman.
Yeah.
Very, very well known in London, and especially in the black community. She did a lot for the black kids in the care system. A lot. She's a beautiful woman. And again, they shut. And she said to me, "John, be very careful, because I think they'll come with you." And then Jimmy Savile died. So he dies, and all of a sudden, it's leaking out of everywhere.
Yeah.
I was abused by Savile. Of course, they tried to contain it with an internal inquiry. Well, it was too big for that. It just spilled over. That became like a massive embarrassment for a home goal for the BBC, who tried to keep it in-house, but they couldn't. They were trying to put a lid on something so big, it just blew up. But what happened then was police officers started coming forward. So there was one lady in Manchester, she spoke out. So I went to see her, and she said, look, they bullied me. They threatened to kiss that with me. I said, that's what they've done to me. I said, you need to speak out. And then a guy called Lenny Harper, who was from Strathclyde Police, and he went out to Jersey.
Yeah, he was the one that
Hotel
hooked on the
Grand.
ground. Yeah.
So he'd exposed Hotel Grand.
He got destroyed as well, didn't he?
Yeah, there was another one from Michael, who spoke out about Ted Heath and all the kids in the care homes. And I went to see them all, and they were all threatened. Shut your mouth, shut your mouth. But all of a sudden, where I thought I was alone in what I'd done, I realised I wasn't alone. This is something that the police have done. And then, of course, they had it over here. There was Kincora Kids Home, and there was a army officer, his name will come to me in a minute. They did a documentary called The Guy Who Knew Too Much.
He exposed it.
Yeah, he exposed it, and they put him in prison for 10 years for a murder he didn't commit. And it was just down the road in Ormeau Park. Was it on? What's that called?
Ormeau Park.
Ormeau Park. The body of Brian McDermott was found, and the little kid was abused and chucked in there, and he was part of Kincora five kids from the old kids home there. And there were the silence that went on around it all.
Been silenced so much over here.
Yeah. So I thought, I'm going to speak out. So I made allegations of corruption and malfeasance in a public office. 3 senior executives. One of them was top of his game by this time. He was one of the most senior detectives in the UK. And they said, right, we're going to make you a protected witness, the corruption police. We're going to take this really seriously, and you're protected. So I thought, brilliant. So I went and spoke out. They took a statement, and then the inquiry was taken off of them and it was given to the National Crime Squad, who never actioned it. And what they did, whenever anyone's a suspect, they've got to be brought in, cautioned and questioned, right? Special police officer, brought in, given legal advice, cautioned and questioned. With these 3 senior officers, they rang them up. Is this true what John Wedger's saying? No, it's not. Okay, bye. Wrote it off. It's exactly what they did, right? So in doing that then meant, so I made a complaint to the independent police complaints, and they wrote to me and said, if you ever write to us again, we'll report you for harassment. You must never write to us ever again. Yeah, that's what they said, right? So then, because I'm no longer a protected witness, I'm going to be thrown to the wolves. Yeah. So I come into work and get arrested. And I get arrested for data protection violations. So bear in mind, all the officers said to me that have been through this, they'll do you for data protection, because they'll look through your whole history of your searches and deem some of them unlawful. So the intelligence search I've done, there'll be an audit trail. They went through 15 years of my electronic audit searches and my emails, 15 years. Someone was paid to go through them. So I get nicked for data protection violations, which could get me sacked, imprisoned, and both. I then get nicked for theft. So they've gone through my email and printed off an invoice because I run a tree surgery business with my oldest son, and he was like a teen, strong lad by that time. So me and him used to bit of money, cut down trees.
Yeah.
So I printed off an invoice from, because I never had a computer, I didn't have money for a computer. So I printed off an invoice one night duty with the police, and they found this template of it, and then they said that's theft of a sheet of paper. We don't give you permission. So theft is theft. You know, that could take up to 5 years imprisonment. And then I get arrested for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. A bit of a longer story, but total and utter bullshit. Absolutely, it's, to be honest, it's laughable. I then thought they're going to try and take my kids. So when they come and arrest me for another time, I turn around and say, "You ever take my kids?" I said, "I will personally cut you here to here." So then I get arrested for threats to kill. So I think I'm going sick. So I go sick, and they were meant to pay me. They didn't pay me. Right. I end up with no money. So it went on for nearly 3 years. I went for nearly 3 years without any income. The banks came to take my house. So they said, "You'll lose your home, your job, your children." So I'm really in rock bottom now. Right. And
Still drinking heavily at this stage?
Yeah. I'm getting to a point of paranoia, and my mental health wasn't good, you know. Things were getting bad. And in amongst all of that, I've got no money. So I'm a labourer, but I can lay blocks. So I started block laying, so I got a bit more money. And they worked me hard, you know. A 20-year-old would have been knackered, you know.
Yeah.
But the lads like me, you know. And then, but I end up in the papers as a whistleblower, and the guy I'm working for gets told, you'll lose everything. You're paying in cash in hand, and so he said, "John," he was so apologetic. "I'm gonna have to let you go, mate. You've been in the paper today, and you know, my accountant said you've got to get rid of him, you know, because it'll come on you because he's paying me cash, you know."
Yeah.
So I lost that job. The banks never took my home. The banks were really understanding with me. But in amongst all of this, one of my boys, he was professional rugby player, was a real athlete. He made a good career in rugby, and he gets involved in a really bad accident, and he gets rushed to hospital. And long and short of it, he ends up in a coma. His spinal column is severed very high up in the neck, so he's got paralysis from his eyes downwards. He's got sever of 96% on his spinal column. He's not going to live. He's in a coma for quite a while. He then ends up getting sepsis and going into cardiac arrest, and he dies. I get called to the hospital one night. I'm in my lowest job. I've got no money or nothing. I've been with him for quite a long period of time. I go home just to get a break, and then the hospital called me back, and I go back to hospital, and I met with 3 consultants, and they take me through to the family room, and because when you're in intensive care community, you become very close with the other family members. You become really good friends because you've got someone so close.
Yeah.
You know, and all of a sudden, one of your little gang won't be there. They'll be taken into this room. You'll never see them again. You know that they've died. You know, No one really got out of there. And now it's my turn. They said, "Unfortunately, your son's gone into." There's a bit more of a sinister slant to that. Gone into cardiac arrest. We tried for 10 minutes, 7.5 minutes on CPR. Sorry. And they, in doing so, they'd broken all his bones, and they'd aggravated the spinal injury again. But they said we had to do it to keep him going. And we've lost him. He's been with us for about minutes. He's got brain failure, brain damage. He's brain dead. He's what you call brain dead, but he's medically dead because there's a rhythm. So, and the heart, we're keeping it. He's on 100% life support. So there's this heart thing going on, which keeps the algorithm going. And they said, but we're artificially keeping him alive. We can only do it for 5 days because the ventilation of the lungs, what it does, it aspirates the lungs artificially at full 100%, and it explodes the little alveoli, the little pockets that diffuse the oxygen into the bloodstream. It blows them apart, and after 5 days of it, your lungs, they're gone and they're irreparable. So they said, look, you got 5 days and that plug's getting pulled. What could I do? So I said, can I stay? I went, yeah, you can stay. And I had like a liaison officer because I'd gone on as sick and lost me as a danger. I had a liaison officer, so I wasn't allowed in a police building because I threatened to burn down Scotland Yard. So I got nicked for that as well, threats for criminal damage to endanger life. I threatened to burn it down with a commissioner. If I'd lost some kid, I would have done. And I told my liaison officer, look, please tell the senior management this isn't a good time to come near me. If they've got anything on me, they'll have to wait. If anyone comes near me in that official capacity, I think I'll probably really seriously hurt someone. I might even kill them. I definitely contemplated and planned stabbing a policeman if they came to my house. And it all sort of worked out. That's the level of hatred I've got for the police. And so on the third day of just being by really my dead son's side and just watched this kid, eyes shut, like that. There was no life there. And his lungs going up and down and the machine, and you just see this. They were trying to explain to me that that's the murmur, and every now and then it'll flatline and then it will just come back. And so it was basically dying every hour or so, and then the machine was kicking in, and it was awful. If it happens once, it's bad, but this was happening, many times a day. And every now and then they have to change the dressings and that. And in that time, I would get sent to the family room. But one day I needed a leg stretch, needed a cigarette. I smoked back then, I don't smoke anymore. But I went into the chapel, the multi-faith room, and I'm angry. And I'm thinking, God allow this. This is something I get asked quite a bit by people. How can God allow this? I actually did nothing. I went out of my way to help those poor little kids that no one wanted to go near.
Yeah.
The vice unit would do a lot for prostitutes, but only the ones in the brothels. A lot of it because the blokes got turned on by being near them, because some of them were pretty girls that were professional sex workers. And on top of that, some of them, if they got repatriated home as a victim of sex trafficking, which on the whole wasn't the case, it was a financial arrangement more than a coercive organised crime thing, they would go to these posh countries, or like Thailand and all that, to take statements off them. And that, whereas what I was dealing with were kids on the street from slums.
Yeah.
So there was no foreign travel, so you can see. And then when they raided a brothel, the crime would kick in and they could take a lot of money off. And that was money. Whereas what would I get money from gypsy kids that are being raped in crack houses? Where's that going to come from, So there's the whole, and I was sort of saying, God, I help these kids. And look, I got prison. I generally thought I was going to go to prison. Yeah. And my friend who I did the tree surgery with, he'd served 19 years in prison. He was a very, very violent man. And I even said to him, Cornish Dave, bless him, I said, what do I expect if I go to prison when I'll get done over? Because I don't want to be segregated, because I'm not a nonce or anything,
Yeah.
And he went, yeah, they won't like you. He said, but once they know who you are, you'll be all right. And he said, just watch your back if it happens. So I had it all worked out, I wasn't frightened, but I still had kids. And to see my dad's youngest was 15. And I'm thinking, what will happen to him? I won't be able to pay my mortgage. So it was too many problems for me to consciously deal with. Anyway, so I'm praying to God, and then I get angry, and I start cursing God. How can you let this? How can this? You're not a God. If you allow this, it's an argument. Atheists, how can there be a God when kids get cancer? How can there be a God?
So futile, really, when you think about it, because life has to.
And what you understand is God don't allow this. Who was doing this to me weren't of God. Whoever was raping them children weren't of God. They were evil. And those that protected, they were evil too. That was the devil doing it, not God. And Jesus Christ makes it quite clear in the books of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. Right. I was stumbling away from God. Right. And it says, anyone who makes the little ones stumble away from me, which is when you abuse a kid and they lose their faith in Jesus Christ. It is better that that person puts a stone around their neck, a 2-3 ton weight of limestone around your neck, and jump into the depths of the sea than I get you. That's what Jesus said to perverts and paedophiles and corrupt people.
Very clear.
Very clear. And he didn't just, there are 3 of them picked up on that. So I'm there and I'm cursing him. How can you allow it? And then there's a Muslim guy, and he's gone in, I'll call it Allah corner. He's there praying. I'm not being disrespectful to any religion. I wouldn't do that. But keep it in the context of what it is. I'm a broken man at this point, and an angry man. So he was praying on his knees, and I felt like I ran up and kicking him up the arse. And I start saying, stupid religion, what rubbish, how's that going to help? And I wanted to fight. I wanted to hurt him, right? I wanted him to react to me, but he was a doctor. He wasn't going to do that. And then a black guy came in, security guard, because he was big Sudanese guy. And he heard it all. And I went, you lot, again, please understand where I'm coming from, but I want to be as honest as I can. I said, you lot, leave your kids, you black guys, the baby father culture. So he got it as well. And then there was an Indian lady. She was doing something with the little Hindu stuff. And I took mock that, stupid gods, stupid with all their arms and animals and all that. What a load of rubbish. And then I got the Bible and I said, who would even bother reading this? And I threw it and it landed, and then it opens on Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. And it says, I lay a place for you at the table of thine enemies. And it put a shiver down my spine. I think, have I been put at the table of my enemies? Is it? And it says, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, my son's dying, he's dead, I will fear no evil. And I read it, I couldn't, it was, Jesus, is this what you've done? You put me at the table of my, and you're telling me not to fear them. And the one thing you learn when you become a Christian, you exchange fear for a thing called faith. And what if faith is it's not tested? And it was fear that was doing this to me. Fear. I was scared. And Jesus said, you don't fear. You want to follow me? The first thing you must do is throw that fear away. And then it flipped and it went to the book of Matthew, the shepherd again. And it says about the shepherd will leave the 99 sheep to go after the stupid one that strayed. I'm thinking, that's what I've been going after, these stupid kids who can't behave themselves, no fault of their own. Again, keep it in the context. And the love of this shepherd, who is Jesus, will leave that 99 that are good,
or the least of them,
for that one who don't play the game. And it broke me, and I thought, this is a message of love and never giving up on the sheep because they're lost and they don't understand, and he knows it. And he knows that they're worth. There's 99 of them there, but he knows that that one will make it around 100 and it's worth it.
Yeah.
And he will do it. And that will be at night, and that will be a sheep amongst the wolves. And it broke me. And I thought, that's what you've done to me. You've put me as sheep amongst the wolves. You've come back for me, and you're telling me to fear no evil. And I fell on my knees. I fell on my knees, and I couldn't stop crying. And do you know what happened then? The guy I racially abused, the black guy, come and pick me up. He picked me up, Muslim guy. And I said, I'm so sorry. He went, it's okay. I said, look, I'm in this terrible situation. And he lifted me up and he walked me back to the intensive care and he took me in. And I said, I'm going to say goodbye to my son because my intention now is to say goodbye to my son. And then I just said, Jesus, please, if you can hear me, that little sheep in there's done nothing wrong. He never hurt anyone. He don't want to hurt anyone. I said, can I be your shepherd? I will go after them lost sheep, but give me my sheep back. Send him back to me, and I will be the shepherd that goes out. I will do that for you, but give me my sheep back. And I said, this guy, I'm going to say goodbye to my son now. So that was it. My intention was to kiss my son goodbye. Right? Anyway, so I go in, and if ever you saw that story of, this is why I can't warm to these films about the Essex gangsters, a foot soldier and all that. That little girl, Leah Betts, died, and her dad watched her with all the pipes in her mouth, dying.
For days,
Yeah. And I'm now in the same position as her dad. No father should ever see that. And that's what my son was, these pipes everywhere, and they make these films about these tossers that were sold them drugs up. I know the guy does it and he's a nice bloke, but I'm not knocking him on the person, but it's wrong. Yeah. It's wrong. Shouldn't be venerating these people. Anyway, I put my arm around him, and the nurse is there, and says, when he's clean, and says, you have no idea the love I have for you. And I said, when the light comes, you walk to it in the name of Jesus. You walk to it in the name of Jesus, but only in the name of Jesus. You walk to it. And I said, but know that I love you. And I kissed him. And as I did it, his eyes opened. And he mouthed, I love you, with this pipe. And these machines just went, ding, 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 ding. And then I said, grab my hand. And he grabbed my hand. I said, your other hand. And he grabs it like that. And I went, move that toe, that foot. And I went, now the other one. He moved it. And then these doctors come rushing in. And they went, oh, they couldn't make it out, right? And he sat up. He then sits up. He's open like that. And they're like, but he spoke, right? And he moved. He was paralyzed from the eyes down. And one consultant was strong. She said, what the fuck happened? She said, John, this is a big problem. I went, why is that? She went, it's what we call a miraculous recovery. There is no medical explanation for this. This should not be happening. And then she told me something that I never left me. She said, these kids, these young boys, when they come in here, their eyes are worth a lot of money. And it's the organ stuff. She said, you must get him home as quick as you can, because that machine keeps the heart going. You can't.
So everything is good for the picking.
Now, she told me in confidence, right?
Wow.
She said they're worth a lot of money. The eyes, that's what she said. Right. And said, get him away from here. And 2 weeks later, he walked out of the hospital. He now teaches snowboarding. I do a video showing the church. You know, there's pictures of him. I've got pictures of him like paralyzed, then in a wheelchair, and then I've got pictures of him snowboarding. There was no explanation. And then I go home from that, but I'm different because something has gone from me. It's called fear. And I drive home, and when I drive home, the police are waiting for me, and they arrest me for child neglect because the colleague had told the police, leave John away. So instead of that, they did surveillance on me. And when I come home, thinking my son's dead, they've nicked me. And anyway, it was a county force. It wasn't the Metropolitan Police because I lived outside of London by this time. And I basically said, you ain't touching my kids. They were sent to take my young point of care. You're home, you're jobbing your children. I said, someone will die before that kid leaves his house. It ain't happening. They need 10 men. You two ain't going to do it. Ain't going to happen. I said, I will bite you. I will poke your eyes. I would anything. I said, but you will not get hold of me. Right. And one guy, the older guy, he went, "Son, what's going on?" I went, "You need to listen." I told him what had happened, and he pulled his facts. He went, "No, this was sent through to us," and the Metropolitan Police had told him, the Hertfordshire Police, that I'd left my child home alone without food and everything. I opened my fridge; it was full of food, and he weren't home alone. My 23-year-old was there, and he went, "Well, they've just lied to us." And he went, "Listen, this stops from me. There's no way this is happening." And him and his colleague walked out. Right, didn't nick me. Within a matter of weeks, the Crown prosecution, every single case, they threw it out. I was then repaid the money from being sick. They paid it all back.
Back pay,
Yeah. And then they said, "If you want to take pension, you can go. We'll sign it. You can go." So how it flips, the devil gave up, you know. And then I thought, right, my bargain now. I agreed to do this work. So I was watching telly one day, and there's this guy, and he's shouting and screaming in Trafalgar Square, and he looks fit and strong, you know, a bloke called Bill Maloney. And
Yes.
he runs pop films, and he's there, and he's giving it that. So anyway, me and an old colleague went and tracked him down, and I went and met him, and oh man, he's from the street, Bill. He's hard, man.
Proper energy.
God, man, what a fight. And me and him just clicked. And he went, "Johnny, use your skills and go out and interview these people. Their lives will be like mine. We've all been abused. We've all been sexually abused." And so I did. So I went round. I called it Voice for the Voiceless. Went round interviewing them, and then it went crazy. It started going viral. My videos were like, from 1 minute being suppressed, no one knowing me, all of a sudden the whole world knew me. I then get called to go to Holland. A guy calls me and he went, "Look, I was in the same American guy, same situation as you. I was in the New York police, and exactly the same thing happened. Different sort of criminality, but they actually tried to kill me." And he went, "Come and meet me." And it was Frank Serpico from the film Serpico, which was my inspiration for joining the police anyway. I went and met him.
Full circle. Right?
Yeah, he's a bit of a dickhead though. He was a bit of an idiot. I didn't want him at all, but don't meet your heroes, isn't it, really? And then I end up linking in with a guy called Chris Lambriano, from Cray Twins, gangster, murderer, and all that. And again, like Bill, just never met someone, Bill and Chris went on to become my best friends, you know. And we went on to campaign. And then what happened was, Bill said to me, "Look, there was 7 of us from Irish Traveller families, Irish Traveller, Bill is, and they were put in a care system, and that's why I ended up little Cockney instead of talking like the Irish Traveller thing. But they terribly abused all of them." And he said, out of the 7, there's only a couple left. The rest are all dead through suicide and through murder, you know. And
I've heard Bill's story. It's horrendous. Yeah.
And his sister Diana, he said, "We need to do it for her." He said, "Johnny, you need to read her statement." And her body was covered in these ritualistic scars, and it was Satanic group got hold of her and basically tortured her. And she had these scars all over her body, pentagrams and all sorts of things. He said, "Talk about Satanic Ritual Abuse. No one's doing it. You need to do it." And he had quite a sixth sense, Bill. And so I said, "Okay, I don't." Anyway, within a few days, someone contacts me who's a survivor of ritual abuse. So I spoke with her, and then I spoke with another one, and then I started putting these interviews out, and of course, and that was a real game changer for me, because things started going very badly wrong very, very quickly. I started having dead animals left outside my house. There was these little voodoo dolls. I've got pictures of them. I can sort of show you and that. And I was starting to slide into a very dark place very quickly. And I'm walking along past a church one day, and there's a bang on a window, and it's I was a Catholic, But this guy is a pastor. I didn't even know what a pastor was. But it was a Jamaican, proper Jamaican, twang, black guy. And he went, son, I'm the pastor at this church. I went, oh, okay. Father, he went, no, pastor, he explained the denomination of it. Oh, we said, we're Christian. He said, what are you involved in? I went, well, nothing really. I'm trying to have a good life. He went, no, you're caught up in something very dark. I went, I don't understand. He said, listen, when I saw you, I saw a rabbit being ripped apart by wolves. He said, you really need help. And he said, have you been baptized? I went, yeah, baptized, christened. And they went, no, you're born again Christian. I didn't even know what it meant. I went, well, what is it? I always thought Christians were a little bit woolly, a bit lefty, a bit soppy, I didn't really understand Christianity. And he went, no, we don't worship the church, we worship Jesus. He went, give me a number, someone will be in touch. So a day later, I get a call from a guy called Brian Knox. And Brian Knox, then a Scottish guy, and he sends me through a video link. He said, watch this video, and it's his testimony. Oh, well, I mean, this guy was dangerous. He was one of the most dangerous guys in the Scottish crime system, He had a big scar down his face. He's to trial for murder twice and waltz involved in the most horrendous violence. He would debt collect. He said, a typical day I could stab up to 9 people. Just go. He said, I think nothing of sticking a knife in someone. So dangerous. He got involved in dark criminality, drug importation, brothel running, everything. But he went to Jesus. He was in a bad way. He went to Jesus. He's an evangelist preacher now. He's a man. He was ex-Royal Marine as well, and a martial artist. He was. Yeah, you see him. He was a real deal, but now he's an evangelist. He's a preacher, and he said, "Come down to near Eastbourne." He said, "I'm going to baptize you. You need to become a born again Christian, John." And I didn't dispute it. I went, "Yeah, I know." And he said, "There'll be another guy there." So I went down. There was a guy there he was from the Balls in Glasgow. He's an ex-paratrooper who ended up as on the streets a heroin addict. Just a crazy guy. But now he's a Christian. He's an evangelist. And they both baptized me in the sea. So there I am, once a detective, being baptized. All my friends now are now ex-criminals.
Yeah.
Being baptized by an ex-murderer, pimp, whatever he might have been, in the sea by an ex-smackhead. They're baptized by irony. No one says God ain't got into
Well, Jesus took the hang around with the kings and queens.
He came to the sin. He came, and that was the start of the most amazing journey and transformation. A miracle. My son, he never let me down there. And then being introduced to people, and I ended up being introduced to a guy called Ez Catel. Well, I thought I'd met them all until I met Ez, dangerous, feared enforcer, big black guy from the East End of London. And he not really a household name, but in the criminal world, he was a major heavyweight, shooting, stabbings, everything. Runs a church. So I went to his church, and then I saw this guy in action, sheer compassion that come out of him. And I become like a value member of his congregation. Learned a lot from him. I started getting a lot of ritual abuse survivors come to me, but I was now in a position to take it.
The darkness.
Take it, yeah. And you can't do this on your own. You can't. There's no way. You will be eaten whole if you try and do this, because the other side knows your weaknesses, Document redemption, and it was really 3 people. You get it on Vimeo. It costs a couple of quid. Go to the site Vimeo and put Redemption John Wedger, and you'll see it. It's all about change. So 3 people: Chris Ambiano, a guy called Stephen French, aka the devil himself, Stephen French. And then I'll quickly give him a little bit of a big up, because his story is probably the craziest of all of them.
Yeah.
And then Ez, and it's all about who were you, what was the change, what made you change, who are you now? I mean, even French, he told me that helped at least 1,000 people, young men, not commit suicide. So I was giving a testimony in a church in Blackpool, and there's afterwards there's a black pastor comes on. He went, "So you're telling me Stephen French has saved 1,000 people from suicide?" I went, "Yeah." He went, "No, you're wrong. It's more than that. It's double that." I went, "Oh, okay." He went, "I baptised Stephen. He said, I know him." And I went, "Wow, I didn't know that." A guy called Charlie Hale, quite a character. You know, he used to be a stand-up comedian. He's a black Yorkshireman. Now he runs a church. And he said, "Have you heard the story of him?" I said, "Well, I've heard one of them." Then he tells me another one, which is different than mine. So Stephen calls me up one day, and he heard my name 3 times in a day, and we agreed to meet. And he said, we got to do something. We got to help people, John. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm all for that, you know." And he then rings me up and he said, he was in a situation in his days of crime as a taxman, enforcer, and everything else. Of course, he's a 3 times champion, world champion,
Kickboxer.
Yeah, karate, kickboxing, man. Really tough guy. And but he'd rattled a lot of cages in the underworld of Liverpool. You know, must have been a right hard scene anyway. And there was an assassination put out on him, and
A couple of attempts.
yeah. But only there's a shooting, and it's his brother, but it's his, you know, it's the black brother as opposed to his, you know, but a guy called Andrew John, who's like as close, well, probably closer than the brother, really. He gets a bullet and dies. Stephen don't, but the bullet was aimed for Stephen, right? So he, when was this? Maybe last year, maybe a bit more than that, I'm not too sure. So he's on his way to a boxing gym in Liverpool, and the guy who shoots his brother is walking out, and he gets filled with rage. And you see it when he's interviewed by Danny Dyer. You see this rage in him, and that all comes back, and he thinks, "I've got our vengeance. This man needs to die, right? Needs to die." And he said, "I didn't know what to do. I felt vulnerable. So I help me out of this situation, because this man's going to die." And with that, the guy falls down dead of a heart, right? Bang, in front of him. He went, "It was me, JW." He said, "JW, do you know what I did?" I went, "No." So I gave him mouth to mouth and revived him. Did CPR on his worst enemy, revived him. And he said, "I'm calling you from the hospital. I'm holding the guy's hand. He's next to me now." And he puts me on the phone to the guy he saved. He went, "That's Jesus." So I said to the guy, "Is that?" He said, No. He said, that wasn't the story I heard. He said, because he was seizing so much heroin over here, you know, I was crying with the paramilitary groups over here.
Okay.
Well,
Sat in the back over
well, funding, that was their source of money, the heroin in, you know, whether it's the RA, what, I don't know. Anyway, but they got the and decide they're going to kill Stephen French because he's nicking all their heroin and he's doing all that. So they send a hitman from Belfast over to shoot him. So he's going to do a drive-by, like a yardie drive-by with a little Mac 10 and just blast him away. But on the way over on the ferry, the hitman, is Jesus, repents, throws a gun overboard. And instead of, he thinks, well, he's got to go to the meeting anyway. He's been paid to go to this meeting. But instead of shooting him, gives Stephen a letter just saying, "I've gone to Jesus. I suggest you do the same." And he couldn't make it up.
It's insane.
And I kept hearing testimony after testimony of that all the way through. Boom, boom, boom. And then the interviews I was putting out, I was getting people ringing me up going, "I was actually thinking of killing myself. Someone sent me your video. And I'm telling you now, I don't want to do it." So I decided to offer him, "Look, well, if you come to me, I'll take you to the church this guy is and get his church to baptise you." So we all know the gangster Dave Courtney, who killed himself last year, nearly a year ago, I think. He whatever the conspiracies say, he did shoot himself. Anyway, so his best friend, like called Brendan, gets in touch with me. Said, I'd like to talk to you. So I went and saw Brendan.
The guy he lived with?
Yeah, Brendan. Yeah. So I go and see Brendan, and he's engaged to be married. He said, Dave actually cared about Jesus for his life, what he'd done in his life, and it never happened. And he had actually tried to ring up Chris Lambrano a couple of times because Chris was a conduit to Jesus, really, for that world of criminality.
Yeah.
That's who he could associate with. And for some reason, that connection, Chris didn't pick up the phone or whatever. Anyway, it's not Chris's fault or anything like that. There's no blame there. But Dave took his own life, and so Brendan said, look, I want to become Christian. Can you help me? I went, yeah, I'll help you. And he said, my missus as well. So I was like, oh, okay. And then I get contacted by a member of the band E17, a guy called Terry Caldwell, who runs a band now. And he's been watching my work, and he's saying, look, I want to go to Jesus. I keep getting this thing. I'm getting dragged back into these old habits of this rock and roll. I don't want to do it. I want to be a good man and a good husband and a good father. And I need Jesus. And I keep thinking of you. So anyhow, I've got a whole group of people come to me. So I said, come, just turn up to the church then. So I ring out the pastor and I said, can we get these people baptized? And I started working with ex-offenders and ex-criminals coming out of prison. And a couple of them wanted it as well. So I said, get down to church. And then I rang up Chris Lambriano and I said, Chris, this is getting a bit too big for me. I don't know what to do. I've got all these people coming. It's a bit of a burden on the church. He went, I'm an ordained minister. He said, how about I baptise them? I went, all right. He said, can you work it out with the priest in the church? I went, yeah. So Chris turned up and baptised them all. And the newspaper, Daily Mail, come and filmed it. And it was brilliant. It was one of the best days we've ever had. It was an amazing day. And, one of the guys that I got from the ex-criminal, he sort of tried to do a runner and we had to go and get him and drag him back. He said that the devil don't want me to do it. And my son who got injured, I got him in there, and it was fantastic. Really, really good. It was just a brilliant day.
When did the documentary come out?
It's out already. Vimeo. On to the site Vimeo. I think it might be out on. I'm trying to get it on Netflix. I bounced it for some reason.
Okay.
Some copyright issue. But Vimeo, it's just Redemption, Jon Wedger. I think it's £2 to watch it, and it is good. Yeah, it really had the pickup we like. It's brilliant. I really like it.
Yeah,
it's professionally done
by three in it are Stephen French, Esmond Catel, and Chris Lambriano. And this is where it's sort of taken me now. It was, and also now we've been campaigning for a long time for the police to accept that satanic ritual abuse is a thing, because I get attacked by the mainstream media. Satanic Panic.
Yeah, Satanic Panic. It's a well-known satirical magazine that always attacks me. By well-known celebrity journalists, always sort of Jon Wedger's a danger to.
Well, it's because you've made the journey from darkness into light, and the darkness doesn't like it. So,
well, if you upset a Satanist, then you've done the right thing. But what's happened there is the government now accepted it, and the police force have put out a paper now called Project Hydrant, where they are now going to start training officers to look at signs of satanic and ritual abuse. So it's a massive milestone. So they can no longer say it's a nonsense, because now officially it is. We just need Parliament now to pass aggravating laws to say that if a kid is, say, abused in this environment and there's a ritual connotation, that it's to be dealt with satanically. And
I think the irony of the you call the film redemption, like your story isn't one of redemption because you were always with the best intention. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You were redeemed along the way. But I'd say your journey was more a case of like darkness and the light, just being surrounded by that.
I was a conduit That's all I was. Jesus used me for the I had. The irony of it all, I'm almost finished a book called Irony, and it is the irony of this. It's the police, apart from a couple of solid guys in the police that really stood by me, but they stood to lose a lot in doing that.
Yeah.
And one of them, his family were encouraging just to me because he could lose his pen and everything. So the stakes are high. So the police sort of walked away from me, but the gangsters did the opposite, back me up. The drug addicts, they back me up.
Well, there's more honest people, you know.
It's the irony of it all. And then to top it all, I get a call from a woman who wants to meet me with her brother, and they run the Romany Gypsy Irish Traveller Association. They're thoroughbred gypsies, Romany gypsies, right? And we go over sound with them, and they've got problems with terrible suicide rates in their community, and sometimes there's ritual abuse and all sorts, and they're lost, and they're like, well, can you help us in any way? And they're such a tight community, but as I was talking, I swore, and the woman, she went, "You got to stop swearing, John." I think that's rich. She's coming from rich. And she went, "You're a Christian?" I went, "I've just been." She went, "You've got to work on your Christianity." She said, "We run a church." Anyway, there's been a huge revival in the gypsy community, and loads of them are going to Jesus Christ, right? Loads of them. And they've got their own churches. They've got 3 or 4 churches around the UK. And they invite me to their church. During the lockdown, I was so upset with the church shutting down. Churches should never have shut down. But there was one in the East End of London stayed open. They were African. So I went along to this African church, right? And I've never seen a community praise Jesus and call out the devil like these Africans were on. And it's the only whitey in there. And by the end of it, I stayed for quite a while. I remember their congregation. I took about 20 white people to their church. We started mixing up a bit, but they were so good. And when I went into the gypsy church, I was the only what it calls settled person.
Yeah.
Gorge or settled person there. And when you go in there, it can be quite intimidating. There's no puny as a gypsy king, quite rugged, hard looking. And the men sit there, but they're the same. Walked in, and I was watching these gypsy boys clapping, singing, dancing, calling out the devil. And then he's illiterate, but he does a sermon, right? And it turns out he does it all through audiobooks. He listens to the audiobooks, and he's got a photographic memory, remembers it all. But he started calling out his own community. He said, "Boys, you're doing this. Stop charging the family 10 times what you should do. Stop doing it. And when the gabbers stop you, their language, stop giving false name. Give me your real name. Jesus don't like a liar." And and then he said, "Why is that girl dressed like Beyonce? We're modest people. You shouldn't be dressing like that." Because they can be a little gregarious when they dress the girls. And he was calling out their own community. And I've never seen that. Even in the black community, there's that reluctance to call out for the failings. But the gypsies were doing it.
Yeah.
Because they said, we value our traditions. We know what we do. And the pastor said to me, "John, listen, I now have to earn on. For a traveller boy to earn an honest pound is the hardest thing going. And he was so upfront with me. And I would go for fellowship on the site. They'd have me go to dinner, stay with. I ended up gypsies before. I didn't like junkies. And they become
a community. Yeah,
I got humbled.
Yeah,
that's what happened. I got humbled, and
it's preconceptions, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're never true when you're actually in the depths of it. And you worked in what's supposed to be the highest sort of echelon of morality in society, and yet it's the darkest pit of snakes.
And you're trapped in this environment, and that's how the bullying can, it's difficult to speak out. Because someone said, would you recommend anyone? I went, no, I would never recommend anyone speak out unless you're prepared to see it through. And they went, why did you? I said, do you know what? As crazy as it sounds, because I was clean.
And I don't think, to be honest, you could have done what you've done without the Christian faith.
Never.
You'd have been out of life.
I'd been dead. I'd have been dead. I'd have got sick. I'd have drunk myself to death. I'd have had a cold. In amongst this, I nearly lost 2 children. I nearly lost one to suicide, and nearly lost one in that. My car turned over on the motorway. Shocking things have gone on. I had organ failure with my liver. There was all things that went on and on and on. I got told by a satanic group that if I carry on, that they'll do a sacrifice against me for a baby. I got contacted by a Satanist, and he said to me, I want to thank you for what you're doing. And he said, you call me a Satanist, I call myself a Luciferian. Well, I couldn't really see the difference, but anyway, he said, I was abused as a kid. I hate them as much as you hate them, but your God does nothing about them, but my God will. See, Satanism's about fairness. He went through all the mandate of Satanism and all that. I got his gists, but I couldn't agree with it, But he said,
he's like placing hexes and curses.
Cursing, yeah. And he said, I curse all those who hurt kids. I curse them. And we're going to hold a witch's moat for your protection. So we're going to do some pagan ritual for my protection. I said, I love you for it, but please don't. Yeah. Please don't. But I got where it was coming from.
Yeah. From a very good place.
Yeah. And it's the same with, I get a lot of people from the gay community contact me. 90% of the street prostitutes I dealt with were lesbians. And one day I sat down with one. I said, well, why are you a lesbian, but you're doing sex with men? How are you not straight? Why does that make you a lesbian? And she went, no, men hurt us. I hate men. I was abused by men. So I got that. I've had people that have become transgender come and speak to me because of childhood abuse. And sometimes there's an anger, and you can see it in there. There is an anger and a confusion, but
understandably so.
Yeah. Because it's an emotionally broken child. Someone's hurt them,
and they never really, until that's dealt with, get past emotional age.
They survive in one way. They know. Yeah, and I've had it all. And the one thing they say to me, can you stop with the Christian thing? I went, no, I can't. And they went, where was Jesus when I was raised as a kid? Where was my free will? Why is a paedophile still alive? Why are they living in big houses when I've got nothing? I'm on drugs. My kids have been put in care. How did Jesus allow that? And again, I get it.
Yeah, that's totally understandable.
But I just come back to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Jesus says a warning there.
And humanity has free will. These people are acting and doing things of their own free will. They can't stop it.
Well, Mark, we're all going to take that last breath one day.
I'll have to answer what we've done.
And we know what we've done. We know in our heart. Look, I don't care about the Vatican and the church. The Catholic Church were good to me this year, because the Catholic Church paid for me to go to Bosnia, to a place called Medjugorje. And the reason they did it, they arranged it, was for what I did in speaking out about Satanism. They said, when we look through, you're one of the ones in this country that is actually speaking out and bringing the reality of Satanism into, but you are a Christian, but from the Catholic faith. And it was a place in London. It was an ecclesiastical monasterial sort of place that do a lot of retreats. They said, look, we want to send you there. So I went and I bumped into my old colleague, was there. I worked within the police. He's from this area, he's from the Ardoyne, Catholic boy. He was out there. I bumped into a leading exorcist called Father Danny, who does a lot of YouTube. Bumped into him, and I went to the service there and all. I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. It was a pilgrimage, and I liked it. But the Catholic thing, for me, it's Jesus. I won't knock left. What they're not going to call
It's all very sacraments and
it's, and again, they can explain it their way. My friend does. He's like wants me to come back to the Catholic faith. But
it's
me,
not faith, it's a religion.
Yeah,
faith
religion.
is Jesus.
It's Jesus. For me, it's Jesus. I know, again, I'm not knocking it and all that.
It's not knocking.
It's Jesus. It's
the Bible's very clear, and the Catholic Church spent years suppressing it under the Latin language so people couldn't read and understand that it's a personal relationship between you and Christ.
Personal relationship.
You do not need that inventory of the priest in between or the church in between. You can go off the book by yourself, you know, and that.
And I mean, even when you look at the Orthodox Church, they don't believe in the Pope. They do it through what they call the patronage. There's like more bishops, and then I think the Anglican Church try and replicate it. But there's all different factions of Christianity. But for me, it's a non-denominational. I'll go to any church, anywhere. And I like the fellowship praising Jesus, but it is that man, Jesus Christ, who wants us to heal and deliver. And he came for the sinner, and he came to protect the children. Yeah. And my role in this is protecting children. And I don't want people, especially men, young men, killing themselves. Always.
We've went on 2 hours, 10 minutes here, so it's a lot for people to take.
Always. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm really grateful of coming out here. You know,
I really appreciate your time. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I know you, obviously, as I said before, me and the wife have watched you for many times on many channels. It's been fantastic getting to sit down and speak with you. And you're every bit as genuine as I would have imagined.
But if I can just finish with this, I want to call out to all the victims and survivors of abuse, childhood trauma, that your life is precious, you have value, you are loved, Jesus loves you. You know, suicide is never an option, never. Reach out and speak out, and if there is, now's the time. Let's flood the police's switchboards with allegations of abuse, what people have come through. We've got this golden opportunity. It's a hot potato at the moment with the grooming gang stuff. I've called out the Mayor of London for suppressing it. I've called out the police for suppressing it. They're saying it don't exist. We all know it does, but we need the evidence, and the survivors, you hold the evidence. If you haven't spoken out, please, if you can, I implore you, speak out. Shame the devil, tell the truth. I want to call out to the paedophiles, those that have deliberately gone out there and hurt and abused children. Stop it. Stop it. Not only stop it, redeem yourself. Right? Go to repentance and go to the police and tell them what you've done, and all those who are involved in it. Do the right thing, right? Because your days will be numbered. And one day, if you're not adjudicated on this earth, you don't want to do it the other side. Whether you believe in a God or not, don't matter. The devil believes in you, and he will take you. Right? And I want to call out to the Satanists, people that have gone to Satanism as a way of retribution, a way of healing. I understand, but you're worshipping a liar, and he will abandon you. Turn and go to Jesus. Put your faith in Jesus. He will never, ever let you down. He won't. And I hope to think that what I said today proves that he never lets it. He never lets that one little lost sheep go. He doesn't. He will go looking for you. And God bless all victims and survivors. God bless Mark, what's going on here with you know, the Belfast bat, and let's hope that the business rockets. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, John. And if you could all like, share, and subscribe, that would be really appreciated. And this has been episode with John Wedger.
Yeah. Young. Not here to make you happy, not here to make you sad. Your feelings are irrelevant when debates are to be had. The Belfast Bapcast, loud and clear, covering the topics of the sphere, Working overtime to bring you many stories, waking up today the same labor and Tories. A stage it is and our part to play is bringing you knowledge in this way. No filter, no fuss, just tell unfiltered fact, much like the words on those Christian tracks.